Okay, so for those of you who took meat or Foods 2, raise your hand if you took a Foods 2 class. In Foods 2, we talked about meat, right? And we talked specifically about primal cuts. Can anybody remember the primal cuts of a cow right now? Evan, come draw them on the board.
Never mind.
Who can come draw the primal cuts? Okay, do it.
Oh, I don't know.
Who knows how to do it?
I can name them.
It's been 2 years since I took your class.
Did you take Foods 2?
Yeah, my sophomore year.
Do you remember the cow with the cuts?
I mean, I could probably cut off the sections, but I couldn't name them, maybe.
Okay, you want to try?
I just don't want to draw the cow.
I can't draw the cow either. My cows always look a little crazy.
So do mine. That's why I didn't want to.
Draw the cow itself. Wow.
Because before we can know how to cook each piece of meat, we need to know what part of the cow it comes from. Because that tells us about the muscle and the tenderness level of each muscle.
I'm not trying on the head, you guys, so just shut up.
And I said,
Okay. That's one, right?
Yeah.
This is one, right?
Yeah. Is this coming back to some of you guys?
I know it all. I just didn't want to draw the cow.
Oh, Evan. You're lying.
Cap, come do it.
No, I remember everything. Okay, I'll finish drawing the rest of this.
I remember seeing this on the board when we were in Foods 1.
Yeah.
I know brisket.
Oh, so lion. Yes, it's loin.
Don't question my spelling.
So lion. What are you doing?
I don't know. You guys said it was wrong before, so I know.
Oh, I.
I just did a Y and you tried to correct me.
Do you know this whole
Wannabe colored red.
Shut up. Do it.
That one's brisket, by the way.
I know.
You know how
You want to be red.
do you need help spelling that one?
Do it.
I gave up on spelling a long time ago.
Yeah.
You want to spell?
This is my take-home board, but this is what yours looks like.
Oh my gosh. Those are perfect. It's beautiful. Good job.
Pam?
Hank.
Pink?
Okay, how are we doing here, bud?
I'm about to cook.
Jeffrey doesn't know how to spell. Okay, let's just finish up. Jeffrey, don't distract him. We're focusing here right now.
Yeah, well, I suck at spelling, so.
Don't worry about spelling.
Yeah, it's
It's
annoying.
not spelling class.
Have you tried Jethro's new tender lion?
No.
You read Jeffrey. Swear to God.
It's really crispy. Tender lion.
Oh my God. All right, good job. Go sit down. Sit down. Go sit down. Come on, we're recording this. This is taking up data.
About to beat Jeffrey.
Okay, so what we have, oh, and what is this, like the intestines?
I don't know.
Is
There was a gap in there when I
There's a
got
gap,
there.
okay.
What about like the ribs, maybe?
Are there ribs? Does that cow have ribs?
No, it doesn't. Definitely not.
Is the
Boy definitely thought it was.
the flanks?
It just has one.
Isn't the sirloin
Sean, why do you
especially
think that? Why do you think the flank should be closer to the rear?
Well, I don't know, like,
that's where
my
it's
show
supposed to
cattle,
go.
we always talk about filling in the flank, and that's just the part right in front of the hind legs.
In what? In what? Did you talk about that?
like my show cattle, when we're talking
Oh,
about
and your show
filling the
cattle.
flanks,
The one to the
it's
right.
always right in front of the hind legs.
You're absolutely right.
Isn't the shank
These
in
were
the front
backwards. So the plate goes here, and then the flank goes here.
You're failure.
It's easy to get those two flipped around.
You're failure.
What else looks right here?
Good question.
I mean, the chub is kinda right.
The chuck,
Yeah.
kinda, but not all the way. What are you thinking?
I mean, it's bigger.
It is bigger. The chuck is pretty big. The chuck is the front shoulder of the cow. So we're right here. And this is the primal cut that is in the refrigerator right now, is the chuck. And it still has all the bone, everything still attached. Okay, so it's not like what you would find at a grocery store. The next primal cut is the rib. So this is where the ribs would be, the rib cage. And then we have the loin, followed by the sirloin. Okay, now what do you notice about when you hear loin, sirloin, the plate flank? What types of meat do you think about with those specific cuts? They're pretty tender. Why do you think they're tender?
They're the muscles that are used the least.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna make you guys get down and walk around like a cow, like I've done in Foods too. But if you picture a cow walking, which muscles are getting used the most?
The shoulders and
The shoulder, because it's moving its arms, and the back, right? Because it's got to move its legs when it walks like a cow. You're hardly ever using the belly or the back muscles. So that's why these aren't going to be tough, because you guys know from working out, when you work out, you're breaking down your muscles so that they can rebuild bigger and stronger. Well, that's what's happening here. So this part of the cow has less breaking down damage to it, so it's going to be really tender. That's why, have you ever heard of veal? Veal is baby cow, and it's very, very tender, because obviously a baby cow hardly has any muscle usage. I don't know how long they keep it. What are they, like 4 weeks old when they slaughter them? 4 to 6 weeks. So they're pretty little, so their meat is going to be especially expensive, but very, very tender and almost a delicacy. So on a separate note, does anybody know the difference between grass-fed and grain-fed cows?
there really is not that much of a difference, because corn is still considered a grass.
He's right.
So all the grain is still considered a grass.
Okay, so beyond like the horticulture side of it, in general, when somebody says, oh, this cow is, we grass feed it up until here,
Makes it
and then
more
we corn
expensive.
feed it at the end. What?
I mean,
Grass fed is just like pasture grazing, and then
Grass fed is bland.
I don't know, grain fed would be like in a feedlot.
Okay, so I agree with you. I think that's very accurate. However, when you picture a grass-fed cow, do you picture it like walking on hills out in the pasture? It's got all this fresh air, and it's like La La Land.
Yeah.
You know what they do? They feed them grass pellets. It's grass pellets. Do you know that? So it's really not like they're living this wonderful low-stress life. They're just feeding them a different type of food, probably in the same environment. Okay? Now here in Iowa, it might be a little bit different in certain areas, because a lot of you guys are farmers and you guys do this on your own. I'm talking about more of the mass commercial type of industries. Okay, so we got this is where your steak's gonna come from, right here. What's gonna come from your chuck and your round?
Your car's on that.
your chuck roast.
Yeah, roast, okay? Chuck roast, rump roast. Any other cuts come from there that you can think of? Ground, they'll grind it like ground chuck. What?
Your tri-tip, if I'm off the one.
A tri-tip?
Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm not positive. I have to double check. Checking in.
Oh, I know I'm right.
Choose your cut. Chuck. Find the right page. I'm gonna get you guys each a copy of these. Okay, so there's the blade, and what Steve is gonna show us Monday, basically he's gonna show us how to separate the chuck from the blade, which is the under part of the chuck. Most of them are roasts. There is a chuck center steak, a Denver steak, chuck eye roast, chuck eye steak, and country style ribs. Where is the tri? I don't know which one the tri is with. Oh, tri-tip roast. Is that what you were thinking? That comes from the sirloin, so that's gonna be back here. The flank and plate are often used for fajitas. They have a really heavy grain to them. So it's really important, guys, paper, rock, scissors, let's stop, okay? The plate and the flank, these are gonna have a really coarse grain. So it's important to understand how to cut across the grain, which you guys got to practice when we did our chicken strips. Brisket, what happens if you don't cook brisket long enough? Has anybody ever cooked a brisket?
It's really tough.
Yes, extremely tough. When my husband and I were dating, we went to his uncle, and his uncle was smoking a brisket, and he had only had it in for like 6 hours, and it was like you couldn't even chew it. I mean, it's an overnight into the next day for sure situation. So brisket, low and slow, smoke it a long time. A lot like these roasts and rounds have to be cooked a long time. And what the deal is the protein structure is so thick that moisture and heat break those tough fibers, that collagen, all of those tissues down so it can become tender. Now, which of these meats do you think has the most flavor? Beef, good flavor.
What are the round?
Yeah, your rougher meats, okay? Your tougher meats are gonna have better flavor. So once you guys know how to prepare those types of meats, you can get great texture and great flavor, but a lot of people just don't know how to do it. Okay, so that's what we're gonna be working on. But before we can do that, we need to understand and memorize how this cow and its primal cuts are laid out. So what we do in class typically is we create a mnemonic device. Who knows what a mnemonic device means? Nobody wants to be a teacher someday in here? You haven't learned about mnemonic devices? Okay, so this is what works for kids to help remember something like this. We create a sentence using the first letter of each word, and then all we have to do is remember the sentence, okay? So give me a word that starts with a C.
Caleb.
Caleb. With a C.
That's not a word, that's a name.
Caleb
Ran.
ran. Caleb ran. Long?
No.
No.
Caleb really loves something.
Caleb really loves. So let's do that. Caleb really loves
Sexy Russians.
Russians.
Because.
Do we want to come this? I like to just go this way.
But prefers French.
But prefers. Okay, so we're gonna go like reading. Okay.
I'm not gonna
Prefers the French.
But prefers French.
You like
Perfect.
French.
So what I'm gonna have you guys do at this point is everybody take out a piece of paper and a pencil. Everybody takes a piece of paper and a pencil.
Oh, I got a pencil. I need a piece of paper. So do I. Biggie, this guy.
I am.
Faster. Use the camera wanted to see you. Biggie. Biggie. Biggie, you got a pencil? Don't give him one.
I like you.
Biggie,
Now
do
that was get fast.
If you don't have a paper, let me know. I've got lots of scratch paper. If you need a paper. Yep, right up here.
Yeah. You're such.
My pencil just doesn't like pushing that out.
Okay, scratch paper. Shelby,
Oh, I got pencils. I got paper.
you got paper. Shelby, do you have paper? Well, do paper. Okay. Turn your paper sideways on your table, and you're going to draw a cow and label the primal cuts in the correct order.
I think you accidentally put that down.
What?
My pencil is not working properly. Gotta have a crap color. That's a good enough cow.
Remember, the mnemonic device will help you know the order.
It's a good enough cow. Caleb really loves sexy Russians, but
There's my cow.
That's just not how it works.
that looks more like a horse. Gosh, mine's horrible. Look at mine. Mine's supposed to be round. You're supposed to do it for yourself. Round Russians. Oh wait, there's two others. First one's rib. Lion? No, it's sirloin. It is chuck, rib, loin, sirloin. No, chuck, rib, loin, sirloin, round.
really loves sexy Russian.
Loin, sirloin, and then round, and then.
Oh yeah, rib.
I don't remember the P and F.
Plank and flank, or no, plate and
Plank. Plank.
oh, it's plate.
No, it's plank. Is it plank? It's plank, isn't it?
What's the Taylor dirty rice?
Plate?
I told you.
There's plate.
Brisket, flank,
Chuck rib, loin, sirloin, or chuck rib, loin, sirloin, round, brisket, plate, flake. I didn't know that really loves Why did Biggie draw the round so big?
Hey, what's that? How supposed to run, isn't it?
Not that one. See, look, it's not down over here.
That's an asshole. What? No, it's outright? No.
Prefers French.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking,
How do you can't deal with grading anymore.
Grady's carried all the time. He's a good looking cow, I think.
Yeah, how's my cow looking this one?
It looks good. Just so you guys know, there is not a tunnel down the center of them. The cuts all do line up to each other.
Oh,
But it's okay for your drawing.
My cow might be ugly, but it
Yeah,
doesn't have a
there's
tunnel.
also belly and there's a path.
Well, mine has a real big line.
Oh my.
Mine has no head.
It'll die.
my cow's gonna have a tail, okay?
Now, one thing to keep in mind, just because the butcher breaks down these cows into the primal cuts, no piece or part of the cow goes to waste. Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
Like they use it. They use the tallow, like the fat,
They grind it up.
and a lot of times for gelatin in your Jello. That's why vegetarians can't eat Jello, or they put it into pet food. That's where a lot of this goes to, is into store-bought pet food. They use hooves for soups in certain cultures. Yeah, when I was first talking to this guy, he said I might need to get a bandsaw. Oh my gosh. Does anybody have a hand saw when we get into some of the cuts that we might need to cut through the bone? Like a really knife, like, okay, we're gonna, I figured somebody would be able to help us
I got an
out.
electric meat saw.
Oh, okay, maybe we'll be able to use that.
It's not the best.
I asked him if we would need anything for this chalk, and he said no. Let's see. What else was in?
Hand meat saw and an electric meat saw. My grandpa's even got a table saw. Yeah, he's got a table saw.
Yo, this cow's gonna look the best looking cow.
Let's go. My cow's literally the best looking cow. It's going to the state fair and winning for the best looking cow. Yeah, that's what it's winning. Okay, well, we're gonna have to. Lance, are you gonna be in there?
Look at that thing.
That looks like a dog.
What?
I don't know how to draw the ears.
It's 222.
Shot shooting everything.
Here, see your cow.
Okay, so what do you guys think? Last thing we're going to talk about today. What do you guys think is the main nutrient that we get out of beef? Protein. Yes. And what does protein's benefit to our bodies? What does protein do? It builds and repairs. Okay, so they're like the fix-it people. If you thought of our body as people. But here's the thing. What other foods have a lot of protein that you can compare to beef?
Beans.
If you were a vegetarian, what would you eat? Did somebody say beans? So for example, you can get 25 grams of protein in 3 ounces of beef. In order to get 25 grams of protein from black beans, you would need to eat 1 2/3 cup of black beans.
That's gross. That's
Okay.
nasty. Yeah.
What about peanut butter? How much peanut butter do you think you would need to eat
The whole.
in order to get the same amount?
The whole thing.
25.
No, like
Jar and a quarter.
The whole jar.
6.5 tablespoons
Oh.
So
for 25 grams of protein.
It's a lot more.
So many calories. That's
Do you
so
guys know
fast.
what edamame is?
Yeah.
Okay, then we won't talk about that. It's a bean. You would need to eat 1 2. It's we're soy. It's like a soybean that you eat. Quinoa. You guys know about quinoa? Quinoa is a high protein grain. Do you know how many cups of quinoa you would have to eat to get 25 grams? 3. And you would also have to eat 666 calories to get that 25 grams of protein. Whereas if you eat 3 ounces of beef, it's 173 calories. But you already, it's more concentrated in your protein.
Yeah, moral of the story is don't be beef.
And yeah, moral of the story is beef has is an excellent source of protein. What? I don't know what that